Hello and welcome to our cottage garden. In today's video, I want to share with you the top perennials that I think every garden should have, especially if you live in the Northeast. The first perennial I want to talk about is Echinacea. Now this is a beautiful Echinacea purpurea, a stunning plant and just a pollinator magnet. I'm not sure if you can tell, but there are honeybees, bumblebees, butterflies, hoverflies, all over these flowers from the second they start to bloom. There is a gorgeous combination on these plants of this vibrant orange color and this gorgeous fuchsia. They also have a soft pink kind of toward the end, and as they age, they are just a stunning, stunning flower. They bloom midsummer, sometimes even early summer, all the way to our frosts here. They also come in a variety of different colors. We have an orange one on our property. It's sort of this like vibrant peach color. We have these beautiful ones. We have a soft pink in our vegetable patch, and I'm going to be putting in this one. I've waited a little bit too long to put this Echinacea in, to be honest, but this is a really beautiful creamy white. And I just think that combination of the vibrant cones in the center with these beautiful petals going outward that look like little badminton birdies. They're just such a beautiful flower. They really stand out and they provide multi-season interest. Like I said, they start blooming in the middle of summer and they bloom all the way until our frost. Then you can leave the seed heads up, and they provide some winter interest as well as some forage in those colder months for the animals. So here are some stats about these amazing perennials. The common name for Echinacea is coneflower, and it grows 3 to 4 feet tall. It blooms from July all the way through September, but its season of interest is extended if you leave those seed heads up. It's a zone 4 through 8, and you want to plant it in a full to part sun location. It's a great pollinator attractor, hummingbird attractor, butterflies love it, and it has medicinal properties. You've heard of Echinacea tea, I'm sure, and it's great for boosting your immunity. Next up, we have one of my favorites. This is Sedum or Stonecrop, and they are just so stunning. One of my favorite plants. If you put them in a super sunny location, they're just gonna pay you back tenfold. They are just an incredible perennial to have in the garden. Now, these haven't fully opened up yet. They're all budded up, but they haven't fully opened. This is an autumn joy sedum. So some sedums are this kind of chartreuse color against the glaucous blue-green foliage. But these ones actually bloom out to starting with like a soft pink, and then they go, as it gets a little bit cooler in the evenings, they darken up and they become that autumn joy, this really beautiful kind of rich mauve-y fuchsia color. They're just stunning and I love them, which is why I have repeated them all throughout our cottage border. They are pollinator magnets. The pollinators, when they're in bloom, are just all over them. They're these little, almost like these little dinner plates that the pollinators can just come and just snack, have a little smorgasbord. The color of the leaves is so beautiful, and the plants themselves, the structure of the plants is very sturdy. They're very upright, they're very sturdy. They create this really beautiful, almost like a little bush. And because of that, and because of these sturdy stems, they have multiple seasons of interest as well. So you can leave these seed heads up and they look really beautiful with a little bit of snow on top, or a lot of snow on top, which is what we usually get here. And they're sturdy enough to withstand some of that snow load. Then in the early spring, they start to form these little rosettes coming out of the earth, and they almost look like coral, like a little mound of coral coming out of the ground. They are so beautiful. One of my favorite things to see starting to come out of the ground. Usually here, even though we don't get bulbs until later in the year, usually we can even see these start to come up in February, which is really exciting, just to have something to give us hope that the gardening year is going to start. I love the structure. I think they are just such an incredible plant to bulk up a border. They also, hello Bumble, they also transplant really, really well. These are ones that we have divided, and so are these behind us. We actually divided those ones there, which is just as big as this one this season. So they are an incredible plant. If you want to just start out and then bulk up your garden, this is a great way to do it. Divide your sedums up, plant them in other places. It's a really budget-friendly way to grow and build your garden. So let me share some of the information about this one. The common name for sedum is Stonecrop. Sedum is now technically called Hylotelephium, but we can always call it its common name, Stonecrop. And this autumn joy sedum grows about 24 inches tall. It blooms from midsummer all the way through fall. But again, if you leave up those beautiful flowers all throughout the winter, it will provide interest through the snow, basically all the way up until spring. And we're looking at zones 3 to 10, so it's a really wide range there. And this is a real sun lover. You want to put it in full to part sun, but I have grown it in shadier spots and it still performs. It is another pollinator attractor, great for butterflies, and it's deer resistant as well. Next up, we have lamb's ear. This is such a beautiful perennial. I love this. Again, that blue-green foliage, it's just so gorgeous. And because it's really fuzzy, it's a very tactile experience. So this is a wonderful one to add to almost a sensory garden, to go through and just feel the leaves. It's just very, very satisfying, especially those new leaves. They just feel like lamb's ears. So soft, so lovely. Now these perennials love full sun, but they do sort of resemble a hosta. They have that similar structure in the garden. But hostas here are amazing. Listen, I have so many hostas in my garden, but we have so many slugs and so many things that want to eat them. Deer, slugs, snails. So it is a little bit tricky to have hostas in this area, and I know a lot of people shy away from them because of that. So lamb's ear is a great option. You can plant them in the full sun, and that's a wonderful way just to have that wide leaf structure next to some of your maybe strappier foliage of the irises or some of the more wispy foliage like a fern or this Russian sage. Things tend not to eat them here because the foliage is very, very thick and because of that fuzzy quality to it. Now, a few of these leaves are getting munched on, but because this is such a vigorous grower, you can't tell at all. I haven't come in here and removed any of the leaves, and you can't see really anything that's been afflicted. They just look pristine year round. So, some info on this one. And next up we have Stachys, commonly called lamb's ear for its fuzzy, fuzzy leaves. It grows about 8 to 12 inches tall, and it spreads out quite wide, 15 to 18 inches. It is a zone 4 through 9, and the exposure you want to look at full sun to partial shade, so it can tolerate a little bit of shade. It is deer and rabbit resistant. Again, they don't like those fuzzy leaves, and it's a wonderful ground cover. All right, now this next one isn't looking like a showstopper right now because it's in between bloom cycles, but it is incredible. It's one of my favorites. Again, all these are my favorites because these are my favorite perennials. But we have them here, here, and here. This is Nepeta. Some people call it Nepeta, but it's known as catmint. Persian catmint is the common name. Now, the foliage itself smells incredible. Oh, it has a very herbal, aromatic scent to it. It's stunning. The pollinators love this one as well. The only one that the pollinators don't love that we've talked about is the Stachys, the lamb's ear, and that's only because that one isn't in bloom all the time. Now, Nepeta is a really special one because it starts blooming really early. I think it's actually the first perennial that starts to bloom in our garden. It comes up really early. It's blooming alongside a lot of our bulbs, and so that combination is gorgeous. We do a lot of purples and pinks, softer colors throughout these borders, and that electric violet color of the Nepeta blossoms is so beautiful paired with our early bulbs. I love picking a bunch of Nepeta and just putting it in tons of vases all around the house. Smells wonderful, and it's nice to have that crispy, soft, sagey green foliage in the house along with those beautiful flowers. It's another really easy one to move. You can divide it very, very easily. You brush up against it. It smells gorgeous. They really fill out as well. So it's a wonderful way of just filling out a new border. These also put the pollinators in kind of a frenzy. They get so excited when the Nepeta comes out because, like I said, they're the first perennial that's really coming out. And so they just have this sort of this frantic energy around the Nepeta, which is so sweet. You know, like I said, they're going to start blooming very early in the season, and then they bloom all the way. They come in cycles, you know, for sure, but then they bloom all the way into our first frost, really. You can cut them back in the middle of the season just to encourage them to continue to bloom. But you know what? Even when we don't do that, they'll still continue to bloom. They'll just push those older blooms down or to the side, and they'll just push up new shoots. The color is stunning. I think there's a theme going on here. I really like glaucous foliage, blue-green foliage. But let me share some info about these ones. The common name for Nepeta or Nepeta is catmint. Persian catmint, you might have heard it called. And depending on the variety, you know, this could grow anywhere between 9 inches tall to all the way up to 3 feet. Like I said, it blooms very early in the season. So bloom time is like roughly spring all the way through fall. So it's a full season bloomer. Zones 3 through 8. And you want to plant it in full to part sun. But again, I have planted it in shade, shady spots. So it still will perform. It's a great pollinator attractor. I mean, the bumblebees just love this thing, and it is deer resistant. They don't like the fuzzy leaves, and they also don't like the flavor of that really herbal flavor similar to lavender. If you've watched any of my videos, you'll know how much I love this plant. This is the Spessart geranium. This is a hardy geranium, so very different from those kind of very Mediterranean red pelargoniums that you see in window boxes. This is a beautiful, kind of like a woodland geranium. They just look so magical and enchanting when they're flowering. This one flowers early in the spring, so this one isn't really grown for its flowers because it kind of has this nice flush of creamy white blossoms with a red calyx, and then you cut that back and it's just this beautiful mound of very peaceful looking foliage. Very wide leaves, kind of on the fuzzier side. But the best part about them is the way that the leaves smell. I have talked about this ad nauseum, but I absolutely love the smell of the geranium leaves. This one in particular is just incredible. It has a very beautiful lemon blossom scent. Very peaceful. I'd say everything about this plant is peaceful. It smells so soothing and relaxing, and it's just got such a lovely kind of peaceful mounding habit. I just adore this plant, and if you don't have any hardy geraniums in your garden, please just go get some. Please divide some. Please plant some in your garden. Try growing some from seed. That's a great way to do. A lot of these, you know, echinaceas start really easily from seed, but give it a try, and geraniums are just wonderful. So if you see this at a local garden center, pick it up, put it in your garden, divide it. We had 2 plants and we've divided them throughout. And now we have, I think, 8 plants or something like that. And we've only been in this garden for a few years. So wonderful plant. Nothing touches this plant. It's never has any holes in it. The pollinators love it in the springtime. It's fantastic. Also, it has beautiful seasons of interest. This year, this stayed evergreen. It was green all throughout the winter, and that is just such a wonderful thing, especially when we have such long winters here in the north. Another wonderful thing is that while all the leaves on the trees start to turn, these do as well. They turn this beautiful, vibrant red color. Just stunning. You can see that this one's starting to turn, which I don't like. Don't approve of that. It is still the season. but they're, yeah, stunner. Definitely put this in your garden. Geranium is also commonly known as Geranium cranesbill, so cranesbill, or the hardy geranium. Grows anywhere between 6 and 36 inches tall, and it spreads anywhere between 1 and 3 feet. This is all variety dependent. And it blooms throughout the season. We're looking anywhere between spring and fall. So like I said, the Spessart geranium that I have, that blooms first thing in the spring and then it does not bloom again for us. But if you want to look at other varieties of geranium of this hardy geranium, the Geranium roseanne, that'll bloom all throughout the season. So it really just depends on the specific variety you're looking at. It's a zone 3 through 9, and the exposure is full sun to shade. So this is a wonderful one, just crossing between all of those different lighting exposures. It is a pollinator, butterfly attractor, and it's deer resistant. Next up we have astilbes. These ones are a beautiful lavender color. They're sort of a pinky purple, and they're just like a river of fuzzy spires back here. Just the pollinators are all over them. They vibrate with pollinator activity. They're wonderful for a shadier border, but here in the north, we can kind of get away with putting most of these in the sun. They have beautiful fern-like foliage, and this one in particular, we almost use it as a ground cover because most of the year, it's just the foliage coming out, very ferny foliage. And then around this time of year, which we're sitting at the end of July right now, that's when the spires of blossom start to come out. And I just love them. They spread beautifully. Now, if you have an area that you want to keep really, really tidy and you don't want much of a spread, maybe leave them or be a little bit more diligent about keeping them in check. You can also plant them around things that are also very vigorous growers so that they're not competing with each other. But I absolutely love that. We have a cottage style garden, so having things spread and mingle, that's really what my vibe is here. Pairing these with things like foxgloves, which we have throughout, the Coneflower foxgloves, is wonderful because you have that contrast in leaf shape. The Coneflower foxgloves have these big, bold leaves, almost like the lamb's ear. And then they have these tall spires earlier in the year. And then once those have sort of faded for the time being, then we have this beautiful astilbes going throughout. Now, we live in a deciduous woodland on the side of a mountain, so anytime we can have beautiful flowers that are pollinator attractors in the shade, that is a must for us. They come in all kinds of colors. We have some red ones on the property, some really beautiful creamy white ones. I was at a garden recently that had this beautiful, vibrant purple astilbe, and they are just wonderful, wonderful plants. They're intensely easy to grow. I do think they start pretty easily from seed, but I'm not sure about that. Dividing them is probably the easiest gardening chore that you can do, and they really, really benefit from that. We started a whole entire border just with astilbes that we transplanted, and the first year they had already started to fill out. Now they're blooming beautifully. So here's some more information on astilbes. So astilbe is also known as false spirea, and it grows anywhere between 1 to 3 feet tall. This is going to depend on the variety, and 2 to 3 feet wide, same thing. It blooms from mid to late summer. So the bloom time isn't super long, but you can leave those blooms up, or I like to cut them and then dry them in the house, and then they last all the way until the next spring because you can really hold on to that color. They're great for drying. They are a zone 3 through 8, and these are shade lovers, so you want to look at partial to full shade, although they can tolerate full sun in our northern climates. They are a pollinator attractor, and they are deer and rabbit resistant. Now this next one, again, sort of like the Nepeta, it doesn't stand out. It's not super bold in your face, but this is a hyssop, Anise hyssop. We haven't planted this one yet. This one is called Little Adder with these beautiful violet spires. The leaves smell really lovely. They have that kind of anise scent to them. Again, very herbal, really gorgeous. Even when you cut them back, either in the fall or at the beginning of the season in the spring, they still have that gorgeous herbal scent like licorice. But one of the reasons these are so important in our garden is because we have tons of hummingbirds. We have little families of hummingbirds all around, and they love this plant. We have some here. Going to plant this one today, probably right around here to just kind of pop up behind. We have a whole bed of them there. We've got, this beautiful violet color, kind of like the Nepeta flowers, that sort of electric violet that I was talking about. This is more of a purpley color, really gorgeous. This one here is an electric blue. Over there we have a deep, rich, almost amethyst color. So gorgeous. You can also get them in peaches, which would look great in that border. This border here that I'm pointing at is our porch bed, and we have the color scheme in there of peaches and purples. And so that would actually be great in there. But you can get them in pinks, peach, white, purple, blue, any of these beautiful colors. They will attract so many wonderful things into your garden. The hummingbirds just go crazy. And anything that we can do up here in the north to encourage hummingbirds, to encourage the butterflies, the bumblebees, it just means so much because they have such a short growing season. They have such a short window to enjoy all this goodness. So plant some hyssops. All right, here are some stats. Agastache is also known as Anise hyssop, or the giant hyssop. It's about 1 to 4 feet tall. It blooms from summer to fall. It's zones 3 through 11, so basically any garden. And it's full 2-part sun in terms of the exposure. It's an amazing pollinator attractor. The hummingbirds cannot get enough of this plant. It's a wonderful butterfly attractor. It's deer resistant. It has wonderful medicinal properties. Oh, it's such a good one. And finally, we have a beautiful ground cover. This is Lamium, and it's just so sparkly and wonderful, and it serves so many incredible purposes. These beautiful salvia-like blooms, they come up really early. They start to bloom really, really early. This one in particular is a beautiful purple color. And paired with these gorgeous silvery heart-shaped leaves that have a darker green lining, it's just a match made in heaven. These are wonderful for a shadier part of your garden because that silvery foliage really just sings out in those darker spaces. It spreads beautifully, and if you don't like it to spread, it is really easy to maintain. It's also really easy to propagate. You can just divide it into multiple different plants and plant a tiny little clump here and there, and it'll take off. I have an example of that where we planted just the tiniest little bit of Lamium after we had divided a plant that wasn't doing so well in another area. It was just getting crowded out by Lily of the Valley, which is a real thug here. So we planted some of it up all around, and it has taken over, and it's like, what, 2 feet now? And it's only been, we planted it last autumn. So it's just really vigorous. It's always very, very healthy. Again, that is a full sun location, so it can handle, shade to sun here, which is so, so valuable, especially in those areas where maybe you have some morning sun and afternoon shade or vice versa. Something that can handle both is so, so helpful. Comes in different colors. You have whites, pinks, purples, really, really gorgeous. But even if it doesn't have flowers, and even if it was just the foliage, I would still have it all over my garden because it's a wonderful ground cover and just a wonderful plant. I don't know if you remember, but we planted this barrel up, this rustic oak barrel up. I can leave that video linked here. And this is what it's looking like now. You know, these perennials are gonna go into our garden, so they're gonna have a second life. And it's just wonderful to see them thriving. The Lamium looks so, so happy. Very low maintenance, incredibly low maintenance. Everything I talked about today is super low maintenance, very low maintenance perennials, which means that you can enjoy your garden instead of working out in it all the time. But I know we enjoy that too. So here's some information about our final perennial. Lamium is also known as dead nettle, and it grows 6 to 10 inches tall, so very short. And it blooms spring to summer. It's a zone 3 through 9, and it likes part sun to full shade. This is another great one for those shadier spots. It's a pollinator attractor, it's deer resistant, it's a great ground cover, and it's a wonderful one for having some interest in the wintertime. This stayed evergreen for us this whole past winter, which was fantastic. I just have a few more things I want to share with you. I want to mention my top plant probably for the Northeast, and that is ferns. Ferns are probably one of my favorite plants of all time, and they are just so romantic. There's an exotic quality to them. They are stunning. They can fit into tons of different gardening styles and designs, and they are magical, whimsical. They come out in these beautiful little fronds at the beginning of the season, unfurling so majestically, and they are just wonderful, wonderful plants. I think I'm going to do an entire video dedicated to ferns. So the Northeast is kind of really like, it's a fern haven. It's a wonderful place for ferns. So I wanted to do something dedicated specifically to that. But go and get yourself a fern. There are tons of ferns all over. Maybe respectfully, maybe divide some ferns if you can find them. Make sure you only take as much as you need, be a responsible forager. But ferns are wonderful, they're beautiful, they're gorgeous in the garden, and we have tons of them. And those might be my number one. They're just so easy. They're just like a foolproof, easy, no muss, no fuss plant. A couple other things I wanted to mention. These are sort of like honorable mentions / you might have been tempted to put these in your garden. And I'm not going to deter you from that. I'm not going to convince you out of that. But I am just going to warn you of a few things. So phlox, daylilies, and hostas. These are all really, really common, and they're all very, very popular in gardens here in the Northeast. I'm not discouraging you from putting them in your garden because they are incredible. Early spring woodland phlox, those ones for me are amazing because they do not get afflicted with powdery mildew. It's too early in the season when they're really in their prime. So I would recommend going with those. These are a later blooming phlox, and they every single year are afflicted with powdery mildew and rust. Now this one's looking okay. It gets to stay, it gets to live on in this spot for a little bit because it's pushed through and it's looking a lot better. But we've had to move a few of them, and they do tend to just look really mangy around this time of year in the middle of the season. But these are gorgeous. The scent is incredible. They just come up in these beautiful panicles. I love this color. During the day, it looks a little bit more pink, and then at night, it turns purple. Very, very beautiful. A wonderful plant. But like I said, because it's afflicted with these things, because it's not an easy kind of bulletproof plant, I left it off this list. The other one is daylilies. Daylilies are loved by many here, and they are planted all over the place. I like daylilies. I think they're really nice, but I don't think they die back particularly well, and they get eaten. They get eaten really badly by deer here. We had a bunch of daylilies here on the top of this little hill area when we first moved in, and before we put up our deer fence, we didn't even know what colors they were because the blossoms were being eaten first thing in the morning when they came out. So that's another thing just to keep in mind. The foliage dies back, and it dies back pretty poorly. They turn bright yellow, and so it's very obvious. You know, some things die back gracefully, and you can kind of get away with being more of a gentle gardener and not going out there with your clippers all the time. But those are, yeah, there's just a little bit more maintenance. So you can plant these, and I think they're great, and they add wonderful structure to a cottage garden. But there are just a few things to keep in mind that might make them a little bit higher maintenance. Hostas as well. Like I said earlier, slugs, snails, and deer love hostas. So if you wanted to plant things that are great for the Northeast, I would maybe steer clear of some of these, depending on your garden situation. All right, that's it. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for joining me. Like if you like, subscribe to this channel. You know, we're a growing channel, we're a smaller channel. I'm so grateful to all of you who have subscribed, but we really appreciate you subscribing. It helps us out a lot. All right, let me know what your favorite perennials are. Let me know if I missed any. I keep going, oh, I think I missed something, I think I missed something. So please let me know if I did down in the comments. Again, I love hearing where you're from, so share that as well. And I'll see you again very soon. All right, bye.